I'd say I want to give myself color, but since I burned my ass to a crisp this weekend, I already have it. I hung out at a pool party on Saturday and came home a lobster, and I'm paying for it hard because it's fucking hot here.
Dang.
Don't they have a sunscreen where you live, dude?
Yeah, if it's 2 million sunblock, it might work.
Okay.
Legitimately, actually, we brought sunscreen, but the sunscreen we brought was apparently mostly depleted by the time we brought it and didn't realize it.
Yep.
So we sprayed what we could, but then I laid on an inner tube for like 20 minutes just floating around the pool in direct on my back, exposure. So while it is my fault, technically, fuck the sun.
Red alert.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Beyond Trek Podcast. This is your host Dag. We're here today to talk to you about Strange New Worlds, Episode 6, the Ursula K LeGuin story about child sacrifice. This was a big story, and this is your spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. Renzo, you had a great observation, but let's go through the summary.
Okay. Were you going to read it? Or
I was going to...
I can read it. You can read it. We
ahead.
can do put on, I'll do it. All right, here we go. Now, I promise I do know how to read, so if I mess up, don't judge me. The episode begins with Pike's captain's log as he explains that the Enterprise has arrived at the Magellan system, an area of space he has not been to since a rescue mission 10 years prior. They are on a routine cartographic survey, so he expects it to be smooth sailing. We cut to Uhura entering the turbolift alongside the captain, and she explains that she is sore after combat training with Lieutenant Singh. The captain explains that La'an has much to teach her as they both exit onto the bridge, where La'an is waiting to school Uhura once again. Number one tells the captain that they are receiving a distress call from a non-Federation shuttle that is under attack by a small combat cruiser, and Pike warns the cruiser to back off as they are required by Federation law to intervene on behalf of the shuttle. The cruiser fires at them, causing negligible damage, and though Pike intends to take out their weapons only, Uhura misses the target when the cruiser fires on them and alters course into their phasers. The cruiser is badly damaged, and the unidentified shuttle requests immediate evacuation. Upon entering the shuttle bay, Captain Pike is surprised to see a familiar face among the refugees, a woman named Alora. She spends plenty of time flirting with the captain after she explains that he rescued her from another shuttle all those years ago, and the others that beamed aboard, a father and son, are taken to sickbay for the boy's injuries. The father says, however, that he is only biologically the boy's father, which perplexes both Una and Pike as Laura is taken to the ready room to debrief. Dr. Mbenga, meanwhile, is reading to his daughter, who is saddened that she cannot spend more time with her father because of the transporter timer. Chapel lets him know there are patients on the way as his daughter is being back into the buffer. Alora explains to Pike, La'an, Spock, and Una that the boy that beamed aboard the ship with them is the first servant, who was chosen at birth to uphold Majalla's maxim science, service, and sacrifice. He has given up his family, and Alora and the elder, Gamal, were returning him to Majalis from an ancient retreat when they were fired upon. The closest inhabitants of the system are descendants from an abandoned alien colony, but Alora seems confused as to why they would attack them and demand that they release the child if it were not for a ransom. The first servant will ascend the throne in just 2 days, and she fears that if someone knew about the ceremony, Majalis would pay anything to get the child back. Though Alora asked Pike not to investigate the ship, Federation regulations require that the Enterprise investigate, and Alora states that she will be joining them, with or without their blessing. Back in sickbay, the first servant appears to have suffered a head trauma, but when Chapel attempts to use a subdermal scalpel, Gamal objects and asks for a scanner instead. He explains that the child has implants in his system that help heal him at the subatomic level, and amazes Mbenga when he explains this technology as it could eradicate disease, injury, and pain. Gamal explains that he used to be a doctor, but now the first servant is his only patient. Gamal then tells them of an old Magellan saying, "Let the tree that grows from the roots of sacrifice lift us where suffering cannot reach." Magellans have no disease of any kind. La'an and Uhura bust into the crashed alien ship, finding no signs of life as La'an tells Uhura to watch out for any surprises they might encounter. Alora and Spock board the vessel when it is deemed safe, and Alora explains that the ship is likely from the colony she mentioned before. Spock finds a strange device on the ground, then Alora finds an oath coin, a military honor given to Lunarian guards when they swear to protect the first servant. This one is defaced, and Alora thinks this person has joined the colonists to kidnap the child. They cannot stay aboard the Enterprise in order to avoid panic, but Pike goes with them, not as a representative, but as a friend. Once they arrive on the planet, Alora tells her assistant to bring out all the guards, and Pike readies his phaser. Back in sickbay, Spock explains that the device he found appears to be a neural dampener, and they may have intended to use it on the boy. Spock is then asked many questions by the first servant, who is incredibly smart and knows much about subspace frequencies and radio polarization, surprising the science officer before Gamal insists that the boy needs rest. On Majalis, Alora asks that all of the guards present their coins, though one of them, named Kier, shows that his coin case is damaged. When pressed, he flees, killing one of the guards as he tries to escape. Pike is eventually able to tackle him, and when they ask him to explain, he says that he was aboard that ship to protect the first servant from Majalis, which he calls a floating hell. He attacks Alora with a knife, though Alora fights back, and he is stabbed in the chest. On the Enterprise, La'an reveals that she liberated many data chips from the crashed ship, asking a reluctant Uhura to translate all of them, as going through the ship's translators is not an option. Meanwhile, in sickbay, Mbenga marvels at the Magellan technology and asks Gamal if there's any way that he could send his daughter to Majalis to be treated. Unfortunately, sharing any technology such as this with outsiders is prohibited on Majalis, though Gamal remarks that one day an alliance may prove beneficial. Unbeknownst to the both of them, the first servant is awake and listening. Pike and Alora walk towards her room, and she invites him in after refusing a guard at the front door. Later on, in bed, they laugh about their first encounter and how unlikely it is that they would meet again. Before Pike explains his future, Alora explains that he would have to be one of them and live by their code, but that Magellan doctors could possibly save him. She fears she's overstepped, but explains that it is something to consider, even though it is still very far away. Mbenga, meanwhile, is surprised to find that his daughter and the first servant are playing a game of alien hopscotch, and the boy explains that he was just having fun. He couldn't find anyone with, what the hell, cygnokemia?
Cygnokemia. Yeah, that's the name of the disease, guys.
Cygnokemia in sickbay. So he looked in other places and found her. Mbenga tells the boy he needs to keep it secret as he sends his daughter back into the buffer, and Gamal comes in to whisk the boy away. Pike returns to the bridge at Uhura and La'an's request, and Uhura explains that she tracked the dialect to the colony that Alora had mentioned. However, the dialect was close to that used on Majalis, and they are left wondering how truthful Alora and Gamal have been, as well as why anyone would leave Majalis to live on a barely subsistent colony. Mbenga comes over comms to explain that Gamal and the first servant have left sickbay, and they find them in the transporter room, Gamal insisting that he is not safe there. They beam out suddenly, and then only Gamal returns, and they find a battle cruiser nearby that is fleeing, assumedly with the first servant on board. They attempt to stop them with a tractor beam, but they attempt to go to warp anyway, and Mitchell can't disengage fast enough to prevent the cruiser from being destroyed. Uhura, in the ready room with Gamal, Pike, and La'an, explains that for someone to beam off that ship without Enterprise noticing It would have to happen quickly. Gamal had scanned both himself and the boy into the ship's systems and accessed those patterns to beam them both out. Spock interjects over the comm, and Pike joins him to discover that the boy was beamed onto a different location on the Enterprise, not the cruiser, and Spock monitored his subspace frequency and distress signal to find him safe. The boy returns to Majalis, and Alora allows Pike to stay and be a part of the ascension. Gamal, now in the brig, explains to Una that he violated his most deeply held beliefs to save his son, and explains something off camera before Una tries to contact the captain urgently. There's interference, and back on the planet, Pike is taken into the sacred chamber, where it is revealed that the child will be sacrificed for the good of his people. Pike is knocked out and wakes up in Alora's chamber, furious and stunned at what he's witnessed. The Federation has no jurisdiction, and he cannot truly do anything to stop it. So he beams away from the planet, leaving Alora alone. Gamal speaks to Mbenga, explaining that he cannot give him a cure for cyanochemia. But if he could see the file, he could walk Mbenga through the theory behind treating the illness. He could not save his own child, he explains, but maybe he can help save the next one. We learn that he has asked for transport to Prospect 7, the colony that he used to believe was full of traitors, explaining that they tried to help him save his son, and he understands why they live how they live. Finally, we see a last shot of Pike staring out the window in his quarters at the star and the planet as the screen fades and the episode ends. Whew. I don't think I've talked that much in a long while. Start getting a little tongue twisty.
I want to dive right into the meat of that twist at the end, where we all suddenly realized what that kid's fate was going to be.
Yeah, it's a sweatshop.
I mean, we all knew it was bad, but then we saw what it looked like, and it was bad.
Yeah.
It looks like Renzo.
Yeah, I was not expecting child sacrifice to come up there. That was...
It makes me want to revisit the Cloudminders and be like, why are their cities floating now? What the fuck?
I mean, we know why the Cloudminder cities were floating. It's because they had a whole slave underclass of people kept dumb by working in the mines. It was not a good look for the Ardannans.
But you know what? This fits so much with Strange New Worlds and their format of the episodic episode. A twist like that turning into a debate on child, I don't want to say child labor, but allowing a child to sacrifice himself like that. Well, I mean, I am sure that's the kind of thing that takes Star Trek fans to their room with their cigars and brandy and talking about the higher talks and discussions of children and sacrificing themselves for the greater good.
It really flips the concept of the needs of the many outweigh the few or the one on its head, because now we have now everyone expected that the one would be an adult and informed consent, and what if that one was a super genius child who was praised the whole time and knew that they had some kind of great destiny to meet, but was not necessarily informed on the conditions or terms of that destiny.
You didn't read the EULA.
So, as someone who reads lots of classic sci-fi, this episode was obvious as to what was going on. Maybe as soon as the sickbay scene happened to me. As soon as the sickbay scene where they called him the first servant and they were like, oh, he's got all these implants in his brain and such, I was like, oh, kid's getting plugged in, kid's gonna do something, he's gonna die. Like,
really?
Absolutely, and I'm about to explain why.
Okay.
This episode is like I won't say 1-to-1, but it's real fucking close to 1-to-1 copy of a story by Ursula K LeGuin called Those Who Walk Away from Omelas. It's a classic 4-page short story that tells this story about this guy being told about this city in paradise. Everybody in this city lives and has fun. They are always having a blast. There are always parties. No one wants anything. No one suffers. It is great for everyone. But some people leave the city, and they leave the city when they hit a certain age, and they just go, and no one knows what happens to them. Well, the question becomes, why do they leave? Well, because they're told the deep, dark secret of the city. Everybody loves living there except those that walk away. But everybody that's an adult knows this secret. And the secret is one child must suffer for their entire life. They will live in squalor, they will be like in suffering, and they will never know better than that for their entire existence. And as soon as that child passes, a new one must serve that role. There must always be one suffering in sacrifice. And that's why some people choose to leave. And those who leave, we're not ever told in the short story what they do or what happens to them, but it's a choice. Those who stay in the city love it, enjoy it, but they know someone must suffer for their delight, and those who leave just go. This story is that, except it expands upon some of the themes. It tells us what happens to those who walk away from Omelas, the city, or Majalis, the planet. They founded Prospect 7, and they are trying to change what's going on Omelas or Majalis, right? This is the other part of that story. It's also a little even more insidious because the child of Omelas doesn't know pleasure, doesn't know delight, doesn't know being full. They don't know anything nice. Their entire existence is suffering. The first servant gets to know delight and pleasure up to a certain age and then willingly makes the sacrifice. Brainwashed for sure, but willingly, right?
But was it willingly? Because there was that hiccup where he saw the body and was like, ah.
No, absolutely. Brainwashed as hell. It doesn't excuse it. A brainwashed child is not capable of making decisions. Right? A child generally isn't. But that's why I'm saying that this story is like a one-to-one copy with a little expansion of this 1974 short story by Ursula K LeGuin.
That sounds like some M. Night Shyamalan The Village story right there.
No. The Village sounds like Those Who Walk Away from Omelas. Remember, this is from 1974, so this predates all that, right? And even Those Who Walk Away from Omelas is based on the brothers Karamazov, right? Which is even older.
Yeah.
This is like a classic psycho myth of like the scapegoat, the one who must suffer for the rest of us, right?
Right.
So with that in mind, I think that this is a really good adaptation of that story. I think that they did a really good job. I do really wish they'd given Ursula K LeGuin a writing credit on this episode because it's real fucking close.
Throw a bone. It's that close.
And you're not the only one who's referenced that. It's all over Twitter and other Discord servers that Omelas is the foundational inspiration for this story.
And I don't think they try and hide it either, right? Like Majalis and Omelas are in and of themselves really close, right?
Right.
If you were going to pick a random planet name out of your butt, it would be less similar. Yeah.
That being said, Ursula K LeGuin was a huge Star Trek fan, right? When she wrote
Not
stories,
anymore.
she's dead now. No, she's dead now. So she died a Trek fan.
Someone's still a Star Trek fan if after whatever. We don't need to get into that kind of
She
existentialism.
was a huge Trek fan to the point where she had a huge crush on Worf. She talked about how her stories took ideas from Trek, but she was notoriously really protective of her works and other people adapting them. So who knows if she would have allowed it? Kind of lean on the side of that she probably would have for Star Trek. If they would have shown her this script, she probably would have been okay with it. Probably. But that's totally just me guessing, and I never knew the woman.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that she deserves some like bonus points credit somewhere because it's real close.
Yeah. There's there's a lot of media coming out right now in the wake of, what happened in the world just a few weeks ago, the Uvalde shooting, and a lot of media has come out with disclaimers at the beginning saying, we filmed these things months, even a year ago, and so if you are distressed by any of these things, please feel free to skip to certain areas. And it's been happening on Stranger Things, Strange New Worlds, and even Obi-Wan has had scenes of children in danger. And so for me, seeing this episode was very much like feeling like somebody who's very pro-gun control trying to have a gun control argument with an entire civilization that has just accepted that kids' sacrifices are the way of life. And instead of not talking about the kids' sacrifices, we stare them right in the face as they die. And I'm like, that still doesn't make it right.
See, I took this differently. I took this as a critique of capitalism.
Okay, I mean, I'm sure there are a ton of ways to interpret it, but my
No,
Well,
I get where you're going with it for
well,
sure.
and that's just what I came to say is like it. I have been not, I wouldn't say obsessed, but deeply impacted by what happened in Texas, and
How would
so it's on the surface of my mind when I interpret media currently. It hits those notes, so that's where my interpretation went.
how did the story about the child and his sacrifice makes you think of capitalism?
So think of it this way. Let's say you have a society where generally most people are doing well, but some people have to suffer for those mostly to do well, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's capitalism,
Yep.
right? There will always be some people who are working in mines or working in sweatshops, essentially, like you described earlier. And I
Yep.
think that that's kind of what this is supposed to represent. And in fact, I would say that Alora actually makes this argument back to Pike when Pike is being all moral high horse, looking down at their thing and being like, "What? Are there no suffering children in the Federation?"
Not really.
I mean, depends on where in the Federation, right? Like, you know that there are some colonies where the Gorns show up and eat people. So
Well, you're talking about outside force there. If we're talking natural day-to-day
we've seen
management,
no outside forces causing children to suffer on Majalis.
I didn't catch any pan over scene of any children on Majalis that looked like they were unkempt or
Nope. Everyone on Majalis, from their beautiful cities floating above the acid lakes and lava, looked like they were having a great time.
The insanely good clothing. I mean, Cal was just wiping the floor with how awesome the costume design was for this episode.
Mhm.
Oh, the architecture on the buildings in your background, Dag, look amazing. Like, I really love
Yeah.
the look of Majalis.
Very, I felt very Roman inspired.
I got a good Roman vibe to it, which because of that and being floating in clouds made me think of BioShock Infinite. Like, it was very Columbia-ish to me.
I was thinking Cloud City,
Yeah, for sure.
Empire Strikes Back.
You really do belong with us among the clouds.
But yeah, overall, I love the fact that this is a Trek episode that took like a classic sci-fi story and adapted it.
Yeah.
It's very much what we saw in TOS, except they were going older than this. So I really liked it. My only complaint is I wish they would have given Ursula K LeGuin a credit somewhere because it's really close.
Can we talk about if we're ready to, Mbenga's daughter, that subplot? I've got to tell you that I knew we were going to have episodic Star Trek, that were going to have serialized undertones. And as a parent, this one's really hitting me that your child is sick, and as the father, you've got to keep your child in a pattern buffer, only able to come out so often. And what kind of life is that for a young girl? It's living on a starship isn't so bad, but when you're restricted to sick bay and you only get out every so often, but in the transporter buffer, is there any passage of time to the person that's in the buffer? So as far as you know, it's just blink, 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 blink.
That would defeat the purpose of this whole thing,
We
right?
had-
Like,
we-
if any time passed, the disease would progress.
Right. We had that
Right.
example in Relics when Scotty beamed 75 years in the future and
Mhm.
hadn't aged. He even expected James T. Kirk to have rescued him, kind of forgetting that he had died on the Enterprise B. But, yeah.
Right. So the way it works is every time she wakes up, to her, she had literally just been sitting there.
Yep.
Mid-sentence, mid-word, mid-whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be hard. I've got to tell you, if I was a father and a doctor on a ship and all I had was a Band-Aid while I was trying to find the fix, that has got to be really weighing down on Mbenga.
Yeah, no, I mean that moment where she's like, "How long have I been in here, Daddy?" is real. Like, yeah, that's a tough question to answer because she doesn't have any clue. Anything you tell her there can like cause her mental turmoil, and you don't really want to do that to a kid. She
How
could have been
long
in there
has
for
she
like
been?
3 or 4. We don't know.
We don't know.
Oh, so we really don't know. Okay.
If we first, I don't think we know the rate that the disease progresses and what how long it takes to kill somebody. If we knew that, we'd probably be able to like give or take a good number. In addition to that, we don't know how long she's been in there. We don't know how long she's out on average. If it's just a bedtime story, it's at a half hour of her life every other day.
Mm-hmm.
So she could be years younger than she should be just because Mabenga is trying to find a cure for this disease. And
for some reason or other, the biofilter of the transporter doesn't take care of this one.
Correct.
It can't. It's a disease for which the Federation has no cure yet.
Something you said, Renzo, about the kids' implants in this suddenly made sense to be like, wow, those implants only serve to regenerate that kid while he's tapped into this machine. Like, at first it was like, wow, this kid's gonna be super healthy. It's like, oh, that's why. Oh shit. That poor kid is just gonna be like immolated from the inside out until those implants can't do it anymore. It's like Wolverine's healing factor being eventually unable to accommodate the adamantium. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What's
Logan? He's dying from adamantium
poisoning.
Right,
yeah.
adamantium poisoning.
And so his healing factor's crap. His claws don't come out as well. He's sluggish.
Oh yeah, I remember that from the movie.
Yeah.
Logan. Yeah, he's in bad shape.
And I think from Old Man Logan, there was a plot in that in the comics somewhere sometime. I've got the issue where Wolverine dies. It's really good.
Nice. So I might understand that this thing, once you put the child in it and he gets all hooked up to it, that the end product is a burned up kid. Basically,
I don't think it was burned, honestly.
A battery that gets.
It had stickiness to it, right? So it still got some goo to it. When they pulled the cloth up.
Yeah, but it looked like a completely energy exhausted person.
Yeah, kind of drained out, like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was bad.
Beef jerky.
We don't know how long they last in there. They could be in there a month. They could be in there a year. They could be in there 10 years. We don't know.
Yeah.
Any answer here is gruesome.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I would say definitely not 10 years because that body was still within the body of a child that had not grown.
A child that is malnourished does not grow, and this thing may leave them essentially malnourished.
You know what the worst case scenario is? What if these people discover how to like replicate a live phase pattern buffer on this kid and they just exist forever?
Oh, nope.
Again, there's no prettier way for this, right? Like, it's bad.
No. And
but your point from earlier though is really smart, Dag, right? Like, this is definitely an inversion of the good of the many outweighs the good of the few, or the one.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's exactly what the society is based around.
And how do we?
And so he's the
that?
power core.
We don't know if it's power core, computing core. We have no clue because the Majolans don't know either.
It might
right?
just be a precondition.
So I didn't miss
Or it might
something
be
by not
nothing.
understanding what the hell the machine even was.
Right.
Yeah, it might not
Okay.
even be anything at all. They just seem to think that if there's not a kid plugged in, their cities will fall out of the sky. They don't know how the machine works. They got nothing. They're not taking
Joe,
notice.
bring your kid over here. You got to plug a new one in.
It's a global lottery that happens at birth. I think at birth. I don't actually remember that detail, but
Hunger Games.
Yeah.
I don't remember the detail that it was at birth, but that was in the write-up that we read. So
So you have children. You do a lottery to see which one of you is sacrificing yours to the great battery, the great Energizer Bunny battery. That's got to be. So yeah, no wonder you'd want to try to smuggle your child out of something like that.
yeah,
I
I'm
would.
honestly leaning towards it not being at birth, because if it was at birth, then there is zero reason to keep the parents with the child, right? Make them a ward of the state somehow so no one gets attached to it. That would minimize the risk of somebody doing something like what Gamal did. But if it happens when they're like 9 years old, then that's when the parent finds out, and now they become like this tutor or whatever Gamal was to the kid. So
Yeah, I was thinking about this parental kid prospect based thing and was like, the Majolans didn't say that the prospect people were of Majalis. They said they were another species or something like that.
alien.
And that feels hard, like an obvious and intentional manipulation to get Federation intervention, because if it was an internal matter, Prime Directive applies.
Yep.
And so they just straight up said it's
Not
an
Prime
alien
Directive,
species.
just non-interference. But yeah.
Well, but the Prime Directive protects planets from internal conflicts. Like, we can't go after Bajor in the Circle trilogy because it's an internal conflict.
Yeah, I think that's just non-interference rather than
non-interference is kind of like an amendment to the Constitution. It's part of the Prime Directive is your whole huge body, the Constitution. Then you have these amendments and these guidelines and exceptions. For example, internal affair, can't touch it.
Yep.
External, you can touch it. Not changing the course of evolution, things like that. So I think in this case, that yes, the Enterprise,
they were lied to, for sure.
Oh yeah. They were willingly lied to by their society, and I'm sure Pike's log probably featured an objection to allowing them to be members of the Federation because of this.
Oh, absolutely. There's no way Pike would let them join at this point. Not that the Majolans even seem to want to join. So
now, let's talk about something that Alora said about, can you promise that in the Federation that no child endures this kind of treatment at all, ever? And it made me think hard about, the Federation is supposed to be post-scarcity. I really want to believe that children are regularly not subjected to this kind of treatment, and only the irregular cases stand out. But with that being said, I did go ahead and try to compile a list of episodes of Star Trek where kids are actually in danger.
I want to point one thing out, though, before you do.
Go.
Just one thing. While I'm sure that there are kids that suffer in the Federation, I don't think that there are any situations where a child is forced to suffer legally. Because that changes things.
Yeah.
You think there's still child labor issues happening in the Federation?
That's not what I said. Nope. I'm saying I think that child labor is fully impossible in the Federation. I think that it's illegal. There's a difference, though, between something happening illegally and something happening at the dictation of the state, which is what happens on Majalis. Right? If someone has a crazy parent somewhere and tortures their kid and no one in the neighborhood around it knows, that is not morally equivalent to the state plugging in the first servant into the computer behind my screen, right? Or behind me.
Right.
Those are not equivalent.
No, I totally agree. Like, the line is, like, every child in the Federation has the opportunity to enjoy all the benefits of post-scarcity. If the child's parents are assholes, that does not speak badly about the Federation.
Right.
So, episodes in which children's lives were put in danger by entities other than the Federation, basically. When the Bow Breaks, season 1 episode of TNG, where all the children are beamed off because the planet can't breed anymore, and they're just taking your kids.
Yoink.
For reasons that are just mind-bogglingly, you know what I mean.
Yes.
It's a wild episode. Not one of TNG's greatest, but definitely gave a young Will Wheaton a moment to shine among all those other actors.
Yes.
Another episode, Miri comes to mind, even though that was totally not a Federation world. But those kids had a bad time as well, even though they were a couple hundred years old by the time they aged.
Well, that was like Thunderdome on that planet.
It definitely was. One that breaks my heart is Parallax, where Samantha Wildman gives birth to Naomi Wildman, and she's stillborn. It's also the episode where real Harry dies and is replaced with other Harry for the rest of the series, and that's just
other Harry.
He's young
Until
enough. He's young enough to be a child. It's fine.
No, he's just an ensign.
So, spoilers for Voyager. So you're right. The Prime Harry dies, replaced by beta Harry, who goes on until the end of the 6th season and is then replaced by a clone who's now, Delta Harry or something. So we've had a couple of Harry Chems.
It's been a long road.
So
It's been a long road.
Dag, the big one for me is Tasha Yar. Tasha Yar was outside of Federation for sure.
Dude,
Yeah.
Turkana
She
4.
dealt with Turkana 4 dealt with like rape gangs and murder groups and all sorts of fucked up things, and she was a child when it happened to her.
Yeah.
So
I don't see a Federation colony falling into disarray like that. How?
it wasn't a Federation colony.
But it was.
I think it started out as a human colony that just went to shit.
Yeah.
But
So it was just a.
Yeah, I think that they were founded by a generation ship or something that left Earth before the founding of the Federation. But
Okay.
why
Well,
would
no.
they just
So
leave it?
they severed relations with the Federation in 2352.
Oh God.
Right, when they declared their independence, and that's when shit went bad. Right.
Jeez.
Right. So they made the choice to sever themselves from all of the help and resources and whatever the feds offered them. And that's when everything went bad. Lawlessness,
Stupid.
etc.
That sounds like
Yeah.
the decision an authoritarian would make.
Yeah.
I'm
thinking
tired of
libertarians.
I'm tired of people living in the lap of luxury all the time and not really wanting to do anything unless, like, they're really dedicated to the craft. I'd rather just everybody suffer around me and have to work for a living for wages that probably won't pay their bills, but as long as the money trickles up, all is well.
They got to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. If they can't make it on
Yeah.
this planet, they can suffer. This is a libertarian paradise. This is Somalia in space. That's Turkana 4.
The only thing you gotta do is put a nickel into the comm every time you make a call.
Yep. Now you know what a topic I want to, and it looks like this is the last recommended important topic for the episode. Horny Trek is back, baby. I like that.
I think that's really
I am-
just Alora flirting a fuck ton and Chris ending up finally, pulling a
Yeah.
Kirk.
Would you like
I
to come in
mean,
my quarters?
Did Anson mount is the real question, though. Because we never actually see them go at it. We just kind of see them kind of cuddling and such. So we
You
don't
know they
if
did.
We
You
don't
know they
that.
did.
We don't know that.
We know it within the rating system that we're getting from Paramount Plus. I mean, it's we don't need the Cinemax music, and the.
They could have shown a thrust somewhere.
So,
They could have shown.
Damn it! You've taken it too far.
I wanna share a tweet that was shared with me. User Meet Your Mouth posted Anson, gonna fuck an alien. Anson Mount retweeted it with the quote, finally. To which Lindy Booth, who plays Alora, commented, happy to oblige.
Yeah.
So Anson did mount. Cool.
Anson mounted and dismounted, apparently,
Yes.
in the Lindy booth.
But
Oh
yeah. So
Sorry,
overall,
making all the names.
I think it's really cool that we got like a nice consensual happy love scene again for Pike. We got one in the first episode with the other captain, but this is now another. So he's definitely upholding the TOS tradition of horny Star Trek. Cool.
Last episode, Spock got him something.
Yep. So there was one other thing I did want to talk about, though.
Mhm.
The Magellan tech levels are very inconsistent, which makes sense. They're inconsistent, but it makes sense. They are a people who don't really know how to do space combat because their combat cruiser did 0.002 damage to the Starfleet shields. Their weapons are shit. Their engines are shit because they don't travel. They just stay on this one planet, so their medical technology is good. Maybe some of their scientific advancements other than that are pretty advanced, but clearly not their like infrastructure stuff because they have stayed on these cities that they don't understand how they function. They have lost a lot of information about their own culture, so their records and computers are probably shit too.
Mhm.
These people are not as advanced as they try to present themselves to be.
You are making a really good, interesting, case. I'm thinking back to some TOS episodes where, Kirk intervenes because there's some kind of technology that's basically kept the people at a mundane level. The apple, where Vol
Yep.
had kept the people at a childlike level. The one with Landrew, where
Mhm.
the people were on the planet and there was like the red hour or something like that. There were a number of instances where
Oh, wasn't that the one that
Kirk's-
was the
The computer?
Purge?
Yeah, it was
The
the Purge.
Purge
computer.
episode. Yeah.
But there were just a number of instances where Kirk showed up and realized that the people are living in an idyllic society, with one exception that he cannot tolerate, and has to make sure that they have a proper, send off into his decision of things. And this episode subverts that by having Pike have to deal with the way of life here.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that he could have somehow forced it, right? Like, we don't know if they have the military might to do this, though I
Well-
would argue they probably do, but we don't know for sure. And it would have definitely been a violation of Starfleet's principles.
I mean, Pike's the one that showed up on a first contact mission saying, "Well, if you like big sticks, I've got the biggest."
Yeah.
That was episode 1.
I think Pike would have had it if he would have had the wherewithal that the guard he was squaring up on had a long stick. Like, come on, dude, anticipate
so
where that's going.
outnumbered.
Be ready to
You know,
duck.
he was outnumbered like 4-1.
But earlier he took out one old boy trying to run away, and Pike took him out like a linebacker.
This is true.
Squeezed him down in the his good form. Well,
4-1, man.
Yeah.
Even if he would have been able to get closer to the kid, then the other 3 would still be behind him.
I like that Pike is not afraid to tussle.
With you there.
You gotta tussle. It's part of. You want to sit in that chair?
And we're in the cowboy days of Starfleet. The 2250s, 2260s, those are the cowboy days. Captains, they weren't afraid to make a fist and hit you with it. It
Two-handed
was,
fist for sure.
of course, the Kirk chop.
Double hammer fist. Double hammer fist. Double hammer fist.
The flying double foot kick.
But yeah, no, I'm with you. I agree that it's interesting that Pike chose not to ruin these people's like collective delusion that they need this, right? That being said, I don't know if Kirk would have behaved differently, because I don't know if they can enforce their will on these people, right? Like,
Well, Kirk
don't
kind of
know.
had more of a hero complex than I believe Pike does.
maybe,
Pike-
but again,
Well-
it's not a question of wanting to, it's a question of being able to. I don't
Right.
know if they can enforce that kind of decision on these people, because these guys aren't as primitive as the people from Landrew or the people from
Apple.
or the one in the one that's inside of the asteroid where they also were talked out of their
Yonada.
computer. Yanada, yeah. Like,
Mhm.
these people aren't as primitive as any of those. So
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe and it maybe speaks to some kind of preserving force that is taking these societies in these different ways. Vol and-
preserving force.
Well,
Tell me
and
more
being-
about your preservers
I'm
theory.
being a little. I mean, I don't have a preserver's theory. I'm making it up right now, but there's a number of planets that have these situations that are kind of similar, and we show up and we either wreck them or we let them go, and they're all historically ambiguous. These people didn't even know why their forebears made this system work this way. But it's
Yeah.
very clear if they live on an acid magma planet that they are transplants, and they were not naturally evolved here.
And then we go and find them to give them
that's
some
not
freedom.
necessarily true. Not necessarily true though, Dag. Right? Maybe this world they evolved during an ice age or something that covered most of this shit, and then the ice age ended and they took to the clouds or something.
They could be not native to that world.
Yeah, but either way, I actually I want to go back to those who walk away from a loss for just a moment, because it's related to this argument here, Dag.
Okay.
Here's the thing. We don't know about the people who walk away from a loss. That's the mystery of the short story. But here, we know what happens to those that leave this planet because they find it morally repugnant. They go to Prospect 7, right? So these people do have a way off planet. They do have colonies that they could choose to live on. They could leave this fucking Y-class hellhole and go settle on another M-class planet that doesn't require them to sacrifice their kids.
Yep.
These people choose to stay, choose to remain in this kind of horrible, like, kill kids society, right? Like, that is a moral blemish on them, no matter how high and mighty they may pretend to be, that only one has to suffer for a whole society. Yeah, but you're choosing it. They don't have to suffer. You can leave. You've got the
But
tech to
are-
go somewhere else.
But can they?
Yes,
But
because
can they
Prospect
leave?
7 proves it. Yes.
Okay.
I would argue that they can leave.
I would agree with that. I would still think that that just belies the power of state-level propaganda and brainwashing and education that goes on to convince these people that they live top-tier lives with the loss of but one every few years.
Yeah,
Well, good God, look at the brainwashing that happens here in this country.
sure.
They can absolutely be brainwashed into you're living in the best place ever. We just have to sacrifice a child here or there.
Well, just remember, the name of the episode is Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach. These
Yes.
people have not been lifted high enough. Suffering happens, they just
Mhm.
choose to let it happen. They
Yeah.
could lift and go somewhere else out of this planet that's a shithole.
So
Go to another M class.
here's a speculative hypothetical. I'm not saying this actually happens on the planet, but just hypothetically, what if we also learned in this episode that their murder rate and their injury rate due to attack is absolutely zero? Would that change any of this?
No, in fact, I think it would make it worse.
Why?
Because that would say that they have enough of a deterrent that nobody ever does these criminal things. And if that deterrent exists here, why can't you just go somewhere else? If you can deter your planet from ever being attacked, then okay, I'm wrong. Their military is strong enough. They're just not good against Federation. Whatever. If they're that strong, then they can settle on another planet that is not a shithole like this one and maintain that deterrence and not sacrifice kids.
I
Why,
definitely
why
didn't
would you
mean
want to leave?
Because then
if-
you can stop sacrificing kids.
But
propaganda.
they're trading the no crime, no
They're not
injury, no,
trading
no
anything.
death.
They can keep that going. The kid has nothing to do with stopping crime.
Right. But what I'm saying is that it's stopped, it's not there. Why leave that for what you think is greener grass on the other side? Because the mentality that the people are going to have, and I think if it's anywhere close to the mentality that we have here, is that until something affects me directly, I don't
Yeah.
care.
Gamal actually perfectly embodies that, right? Like,
Yeah.
he loved this planet. He thought the Prospect people were traitors and criminals or whatever, and then it was his kid, and now suddenly he supports it.
Yep.
This
Now
does
we
look
got
a
to do
lot like
something.
this looks a lot like the Uvalde thing that Dag was saying before, right? People
Mhm.
were pro gun until it's their kid who gets shot, right? Same
Right.
thing here.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take away the moral blemish. They're making a choice to stay here and keep sacrificing kids every however long it is. Again,
Mhm.
could be a week, could be a month, could be 20 years. We don't know how long they're in the machine. But they keep doing it because they are choosing to keep the system going. Even if the kid is necessary to keep their cities flying, they are choosing to stay on this planet. There are other planets. The galaxy is full of planets better than an acid and lava hellhole.
They could totally just clone something that is not sentient.
They could try other things, right? They don't even try anything. They just keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you this. Based on what Renzo was saying, going to ask a philosophical question here for you. Knowing how badly things are in the world, especially in the US, it's just, I can't even begin to go through the list of everything that's gone to shit. Okay, so Earth, the US is very much what you were, I think, making a similarity to with this society. Okay, so Renzo, Dag, a captain from an alien coalition of peaceful planets says, well, hey, you can peace out on Earth, come over to here, and like things are perfect. Politicians aren't bought. There's no rich people hoarding wealth. We're having a good old time here. Come on over. So, considering that you've got friends, family, the life you've lived here, knowing that there's all this crazy shit, that every day you wake up, there's been some school shooting, church shooting, some shooting, there's been some kind of crime or travesty, there's been some company that's profited off of the unfortune of others, gas prices going up, cost of living going down. It's endless. So you have a chance to go someplace that's basically a paradise planet. Would you do that?
Yeah, I'm gone. Fine.
Yeah. But so here's a more poignant question for you.
I guess I asked the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
Dag's
No,
like, yeah, I'm a dip.
Big J, here's a more poignant question for you, right?
Yeah.
Alien captain and fleet shows up in orbit of Earth. They say, give us 100 people a day and we'll fix all your problems. Infinite energy, infinite medicine, infinite exploration. We'll give you technology after technology after technology. But it's going to cost you 100 people a day. And they won't tell us what they're going to do with them. They don't answer the question, but that's what it's going to cost Earth. 100 people a day.
100,
You say yes?
100 people a day, how many ships?
They're not giving us ships, they're giving us technology.
No, I mean 100 people a day. Is that 100 people, the whole fleet, or is that 100 people per
Yeah,
ship?
it's just 100 people from Earth every single day. That's it.
So you take Earth and you subtract 100 people every day.
Yes.
Hell yeah! I mean, like that's
Okay, now
that's
stop.
nothing.
Stop. Now, what if
Okay.
it's 1,000?
Sure.
What if it's 1,000,000?
What do we get out of it? Tell me again.
It doesn't matter, dude. The point is, what's the value of a human life, right? Like that's the
Okay.
question.
Well,
I'm trying
you're
to get you
talking
to
about
answer.
you were talking about no more disease,
So
advanced
no more
technology,
disease, no more energy crisis, no more damage to the environment, etc. Right? Like,
1,000. Yeah.
okay, so 1,000, you'll say yes. Okay. What
Yep.
about 10,000?
Yep.
What about 100,000?
Yep.
What about 1,000,000?
Yeah.
And then the Earth becomes depopulated after
Hold
20
on.
years.
No,
you
it
gotta
wouldn't
be able
be.
to do math. No,
Well, that's why
That's
we're
my point,
talking
though.
per day. Shit.
I've
Well,
played
still.
this game. I
I
played
mean-
this game. This was an ELH game that I played where
Uh-huh.
there was one such drone that demanded like 100 people a day, and it just plugged it in and used their body and energy to provide on its promise, which was infinite energy and do whatever you want with it. And the planet was fine and peaceful until our asses showed up and said, this is untenable, and we blew up the drone and saved the people, and then the planet went to hell.
But so the point though, Big J, is trying to put like a numerical value on life for things
Mhm.
is not just hard, but it's actually wrong, right? Like saying that you would trade other people's lives for your benefit is almost always morally wrong. It's not justifiable, right? It's that whole thing of like, if I push this button, 10 people somewhere else in the world may die. They don't suffer pain, but I get $1 million. How many times do you push the button? Correct answer is 0.
Every time I push the button, someone in the world dies, and I get
Yes.
how much?
$1 million.
million?
So,
I'd hit it a few times at least.
That's fucked up, Big J.
the
That's
correct.
fucked
Hey,
up,
I'm sorry. I got bills to pay.
Right.
I've got
I get
taxes are due. I got to pay,
The-
$6.40 a gallon for
Right.
gas. I've got
I get it.
groceries.
Or-
I got
change
some
that it's
shit I
wrong.
need money for, man.
get
I
it.
know.
But it doesn't change that it's wrong.
It
I would
doesn't
feel
change
horrible
that
about
It
it.
is unethical and immoral to do so.
I would feel horrible about it, but it would be
I'm not
nice to see
saying
those
I
bank
wouldn't.
balances go down to zero.
I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm simply saying that it's wrong.
Right.
You
That's
take
all.
the button and be like,
I don't know. I'm not at the choice, so I don't know what I would do. But I'm saying that it's
Put like
wrong
a
to
shake
push it
weight
even
on it.
once.
Just let it go.
shake weight.
You go to
I'd
work
give it to
today.
Tuvix.
Nobody's there.
I'd put it in one of Tuvix's squeak toys and just let him go at it.
Oh my God.
But point is, even choosing it once is still wrong, right? Same thing with ever giving somebody else's life up for your benefit. It's always morally, like, with really fucking weird exceptions, it's always morally unjustified. What the people here in Majalis do, it's bad. Especially when they have a choice. That's why I wanted to circle back around to those who walk away from Omelas for that discussion.
I'm going to go back to, in quote, Cisco in the pale moonlight, is that I can live with it. The lying, the cheating, the stealing, the conniving, the cover-ups to get a much needed ally in a war to save the Alpha Quadrant. The payout there was much higher than any one person. So there are times where, yes, you may be doing something that goes against your principles or is immoral, and Cisco struggled with that the whole time. And lo and behold, I can live with it. Delete that log.
Mhm.
And
I wish you would have paid some sort of cost for it.
Cisco?
Yeah. I mean, in beta canon, the Romulans eventually find out and it causes some issues, but like, I wish that Cisco had paid some sort of cost personally for it. Like, maybe Jake had been assassinated by a Romulan who figured it out or something.
Yeah,
right? Like,
dude.
I wish that would have happened.
You went dark.
That's bad.
Yeah, it's
Come on,
fucked
man.
up what he did though. Like,
But
you
he
got
saved
someone killed. You
he
killed other
saved more
people.
lives than would have been lost
How many
if
Romulans died fighting the Dominion?
I don't have
Exactly. We don't know. It could have been millions. We know that Remans were thrown at the Dominion like waves of bodies. Are Remans not worth?
Well,
Are they not worth your consideration here?
the Remans. No,
Yeah.
not even to the Romulans. But
That
you
doesn't
know
make
that
it okay.
No, I didn't say it was okay. I'm just saying that was how they looked at it. Now, the Dominion, once they were done with the Federation and the Klingons, they had their eyes set on the Romulans. You can't tell me that the Romulans
We
were
don't
next
know
on
if
being
that's
subjugated.
true. We don't know if that's true because Cisco had to fabricate that evidence to provide for his argument. He didn't have it. We don't know it.
Did we really think the Dominion was going to stop
not at
after
all.
the?
Not at all. But you don't have any proof of it either. All you're doing is arguing from like paranoia, which is effective with Romulans, but it wasn't enough because
Right.
what they provided, Kretek, no, not Kretek.
Yeah,
What was the name of
Senator.
the Senate. It wasn't Kretek though. What was the name of the senator?
Oh,
Dak-
Vreenak.
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 That's what it was. Whatever. Well, the evidence they provided, Vreenak was a fake, and he figured
Yep.
it out that it was a fake. So there's no proof
it's
that they
a
actually.
fake.
Anyways, I'm talked out on this. I'm just saying, the Majans are shitty people and deserve to suffer.
Yeah, there are some choices being made that on paper aren't the best moral choices, but people seem to find themselves in that sort of no-win scenario. Like we have to do the thing. The thing's not good, but it's our tradition.
I want to tie this up with a quote from Jean-Luc Picard from the movie Insurrection. When Dougherty tells him we're only moving 600 people. How many people does it take, Admiral, before it becomes wrong? 1,000? 50,000? 1,000,000? How many people does it take, Admiral?
Mm-hmm.
I'm with Picard on this one.
Yeah.
Audience, if you're listening, this episode really took a turn towards that debate, and we'd love to hear your feedback on your stance between us.
Yeah, call me out for being a naive bullshitter. Tell me I'm wrong, and I want to argue with you.
You're just a
Tell me in the
moralist.
comments.
You're just a moralizing dickhead.
I'll take that too. Call me a moralizing dickhead and tell me your argument so I can destroy it.
Whoa,
Let's
whoa,
go.
whoa! That's
Let's
my
go.
kink. Hold on. Hey everybody, I really appreciate you enjoying this episode with us. We enjoy your time and obviously your clicks and likes, so give us a subscribe and comment and like and hit us up on Twitter at BeyondTrekPod. And until next week, thank you for always going boldly with Beyond Trek Podcast. Hey everybody, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our Patreon and Anchor supporters. Big thanks to Stephanie Baker, S. Tam, Anne Marie, Jim Cook, and Nora Hickson. We really appreciate your support. Thanks for being a part of Beyond Trek Podcast.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your ears. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.